This is Chris with Dive Zone Scuba for another technical diving tips, techniques, and trips video. One of the least appreciated but most important accessories for new technical divers is a set of Wetnotes. Wetnotes can be used for dive planning, backup decompression schedules, emergency decompression procedures, and formulas that new technical divers should be familiar with. In this video, we're going to talk about setting up Wetnotes for technical diving. So there are many different brands of Wetnotes available on the market, and this is one of them. This is one that is marketed under the Dolphin Tech name. They're also marketed under Scuba Pro and a variety of other names. There is another type of Wetnotes that looks similar but that is slightly different, and that's the one manufactured by XS Scuba. But we're going to talk about this generic type that has different labels on it in this video. Alright, so the standard Wetnotes is a nylon binder with a piece of shock cord, bungee shock cord over it. And it typically has a front section with a pencil here. And then it has a replaceable filler here with a number of waterproof pages. And then in the back is a little pocket for different types of accessories. We'll talk about that. And then on the back cover is a transparent window that can be used to display for example, a decompression schedule. Okay, so this is the basic Wetnotes, and what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what you can do to set this up to make it more effective, a more usable tool for technical diving. So the first thing I suggest you do when setting up a new Wetnotes is to get rid of the pencil. Although you could use this pencil, I think it's marginally functional, and you may want something better. Alright, so one of the things that you can get is you can get a mechanical pencil like this. This is, again, comes in different varieties. But what you're looking for is replaceable lead down here, and then also some sort of a little coil thing with a clip on it. So this is a much more functional solution than the pencil that they give you, the default pencil. And so when you run out of pencil, all you have to do is just unscrew this part here and then pull it out a little bit. Still unscrewing. Pull this out a little bit. Oop, and it's gone inside. Pull this out a little bit and sharpen it with a regular pencil sharpener, and then you're back to having a point. Okay, so this is one of the first things that you might want to do when getting the Wetnotes. The funny thing is these pencils are fairly expensive, and you might actually end up paying half the cost of the Wetnotes for the pencils. Okay, so what do you do with this? What I normally do is I tie a little loop here on the end with this. This is kind of slack, so I make it a little tighter by having a loop like that on there. And then what I do is I use this part here to hold the clip. And then I put it in the one of these front pockets, usually one of the first two pockets here. And it's supposed to just slide in there. It's causing some difficulty. There we go. Okay, all right. So then this, of course, I usually just cut that off. And so then you have your Wetnotes, and then what you do is to secure it, you take that piece of bungee and you stick that over the the coil. Okay, so that's what it would typically look like. I think we could probably make this a little neater by slipping this through here more. Okay, all right. So that's what it would typically look like with the replacement pencil. And again, we would just cut that off. The little loop also makes it a little easier to get the bungee off. So when we have this, it's very easy now to take the pencil and write in the Wetnotes to do whatever you need to do on terms of writing down a deco plan. And you can't lose your pencil because it's tethered to the shock cord. So this is the first thing that I would do to better set up a set of Wetnotes, is to replace the pencil with an underwater mechanical pencil. These are commonly sold by the Trident company. There is another pencil called the Super Pencil. I don't have one of those here. That's probably more expensive, and probably works just as well. Another thing that you can do to enhance the performance of your Wetnotes is that you can put in a plastic slate in the Wetnotes. And with the XS Scuba version of this, there is a plastic plate that comes with it. If you use one of the generic versions, it's not going to come with it. So this is a plastic plate which is originated from a hobby shop. There's a brand called Evergreen, and they sell plastic sheets in different grades. And you can cut it to the correct size. What we're going to do is we're going to put this plastic plate in the window here, so it needs to be smaller than the envelope here to make it easy to get in. And what I'm also going to do is I'm also going to just cut the corners on this. I should have cut the corners on the refill when I put that in, but I'm going to cut the corners here a little bit, just round them off. And what that's going to do is it's just going to make it easier to put the Wetnote pocket in here, make it a little bit easier for that. Okay, so what you can do is after you do your die plan in Deco Planner or whatever you've used, and you write it down in your notebook, what you can do is you can then transcribe the die plan onto this card. So what that will enable you to do is to take the card and stick it in the pocket in the back here, closed by Velcro, and you can stick your die plan inside the pocket here and close the Velcro. So this way, instead of having to open up your Wetnotes to get to your particular die plan and having to go through it, then you'll have it readily available on this. This also enables you to preserve the original die plan for future use in your Wetnotes, and it also means that if you were to pull this out and try to stick this page inside this, you'd have to fold the edges in order to make it small enough to get into it. Okay, so this is the slate. Now what we're going to do next is we're going to take the slate and we're going to use the slate and put some things in there to make it easier to do some die planning. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to set this up to make it a little easier to record our die plan. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure this because what I want to do is to keep this organized for a long dive. Then what happens is that you would need to have a setup with two columns. Okay, so I'm going to put my marker line down there. Even the marker is important to use, specific marker. I have, for example, here a Milwaukee marker, which you can get at Home Depot, and these actually work a lot better than Sharpie markers. The marking is much more durable than a Sharpie. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to just draw this little line down here in the center to get this going. Draw this down here, and it doesn't have to be exact, okay? But you want it to be neat. All right, so you'll notice that I made a little boo-boo while I was doing this, and my marker accidentally hit the slate. And so I'm going to talk about another thing that's helpful with your Wetnotes, and that's getting an eraser. Okay, so I have right here, I have a Pentel high polymer eraser, and this works really well. And so what I can do is I can take this and scrub off the Sharpie that I accidentally put on here, and it works very well on the plastic, and it works both for Sharpie type magic markers or permanent ink magic markers, and it also works for the pencil, of course. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some columns in here to help me record data. And what I typically have is I have depth, I have time, I have runtime, and then I have another last column called activity. And what I put in there is things for gas switches and things like that. All right, so I'm going to do the same thing for the other side. Depth, time, runtime, and activity. And we'll actually fill out a dive plan here later on when we get started. All right, so those are some of the permanent things we're going to have on there. And of course, what we're going to do is we're going to write down, using the pencil, we're going to write that down on here. Now, I'm going to also, give this a second to dry. I'm going to also write some stuff on the back side, which would be part of the dive plan briefing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the dive acronyms for both PADI and TDI. So in no particular order, I'll do the PADI ones first, then I'll do the TDI. So for dive planning, technical dive planning, PADI uses, the good diver's main objective is to live. And so the G stands for gas. Okay, and then the second one, the D, stands for deco. M stands for mission. The O stands for oxygen. Actually, oxygen considerations. Okay. The I stands for inert gas narcosis. You want to put your E and D down there. And then you have thermal. What kind of thermal protection you're going to be using. And the last one is logistics, like in case you have a emergency or something like that, and also where you're going to be getting your gas from. Okay, so that's the PADI one for dive planning. So the TDI one for dive planning is start, and this starts with estrel. T is for team, which means team checks actually. Okay, there's A for air. They mean like what are your gases. Okay, then there's R, which stands for route. And then there's T, which stands for tables. Okay, so that's like the pre-dive planning thing. And then the second part is the ascent procedure that that TDI has, technical ascent procedure, and that's schedule. STOP is the acronym. Okay, T is team. You want to make sure everybody in the team is there and the team is ready to ascend. The O stands for orient. How are you going to go up? What's your ascent point? And then the P stands for proceed. Okay, so you can have these kinds of things. Of course, under gas, you would have which gases you're going to use and how much you're going to use of the gas. And you would also have your ascent pressure, for example. And then you have the decompression schedule on the back, and all the rest of this would be you would use this to help you give you the dive briefing and make sure everybody's on the same page. Okay, so what we're going to do next, okay, is we're going to just put in a dive plan here. We're going to put a dive plan in here, and we're going to talk about doing that. All right, so here's a dive plan of a dive that we did on our last trip to Bonaire. I'm using multi-deco on an iPad, and so what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to transcribe it first into the Wetnotes. The Wetnotes pages themselves, so we can retain a permanent record of that. And then we'll also be putting it on the card, which is what we're going to do now. So I'm going to push this off a little bit to the side, this side, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just copy that on there using my pencil. Okay, so I've detached the pencil for this. So I'm going to put in the first column I put in typically is 0, time is 0, run time is 0, and over here I put in what gas we start at. So in this case we're going to start out with the 2020 travel gas, and then we're going to go down to 170, and by the time we get down there it'll be 2 or 3 minutes. I'll just put down 2 minutes here, and whoops, 0 for that, and then 2 minutes for the run time. And then at this point what we're going to do is we're going to switch to our bottom gas of 1255. So then we're going to have our bottom, which is going to be 100 meters, 330 feet, and we're going to put in a time. So the thing actually says 230. I'm just going to put in 2, and then the run time is going to be 8. So of course we need to start ascending when we have 8 minutes. All right, so then the next thing that's going to go up is, after that we're going to go back up to 170 feet, and we're going to do another gas. We're going to do another gas switch, and at that point, because we're going up slower, our run time is going to be 14. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our 2020 travel gas. All right, so then we have a bunch of stops. We have stops at 130, 120, 110. Okay, and we're actually going to do a gas switch at 100 feet. Okay, so I'll go to 130. I have this, by the way, set at 4080, and so it's starting the stops deeper than might be ordinary. So all right, so we'll start with this. So 130. These are all 1 minute stops. And then at 100, we're going to do a gas switch to the 32. Okay, so then we have 90, 80. Oop. Yep, I did the wrong column here. I need to change these. So we have 1. That's not going to be a switch. That's going to be 0. This is going to be 1, 1, 1, 1. And then this is going to be 17. This is going to be 18. This is going to be 19. 19. And this is going to be 20. And these are also, they're not really stops. They're more like slowing your ascent. Okay, so we have 21 and we have 22. Okay, then over here we have 70, 60, 50, 40, 30, and 20. So 20 is going to be our last stop. All right, so all these are 1 minute till we get to 50. 50 is going to be 2 minutes. 40 is going to be 3. 30 is going to be 7 minutes. And then this is going to be 19 minutes. Okay, so let me write in my run time here. So 70 is going to be 23, 24, 26, 29, 36, and 55. And of course, at 20 feet, we're going to switch to our X100. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're just going to put in a 0, and typically we follow the general protocol of doing 6 minutes of O2 between 20 feet and the surface. So that would then make this 61, and then we would now be on the surface. Okay, so that would be the front side. All right, so on the back side, again, what I would do is I would take this and I would put, for example, what the different gases we're using. So I would say, so for the 2020, it looks like we're going to be using 29 cubic feet. For the bottom gas, we have 96 cubic feet. For the 32, we have 29 cubic feet. and for the 100 we have 22 cubic feet. Okay, so that's what we have there. And then for the OTUs we have 67, and for the percent CNS exposure we have 53%. Okay, so now we're complete with that, and we can take our card now that it's complete, and we can stick it in our Wetnotes after our briefing, so everybody knows what we have. All right, so that's for our dive, and then when we do another dive, all we need to do is take our eraser and erase that. Look at how easily that erases. Erase all that. After a period of time, your headers will probably fade, so you can easily erase those and redo them with a fresh set. All right, so we can scrub all the rest of this stuff as well. If you wanted to, you could put different lines in there, or placeholders for your different gases and how many cubic feet we'd use. So you can get as fancy as you want, with all that. Another enhancement for the Wetnotes has to do with the actual papers itself. The first thing that you want to do is you want to clip off the corners of the part of the Wetnotes that goes inside the nylon binder to secure it. So if you cut off the corners on both ends, what that's going to do, it's going to make it easier for you to take the Wetnotes in and out of the nylon binder. All right, another thing that you want to do is on the first page, when you open the Wetnotes, it's going to look like this, is you want to have some contact information. So what I have here is my name, my PADI and TDI numbers, an email address, and my telephone number. So what will happen is, in the odd event that you lose your Wetnotes, or you need to identify them, what you're going to be able to do is you'll be able to do that easily if you have that on the front page. Another thing that you want to do is in the back, so you can reference it very easily versus being in here somewhere. On the back, you want to have different types of things like emergency procedures and also formulas. So in here, I have the flow chart for admitted decompression and the different steps that you need to take to follow that. So the information on here is much easier to understand in flowchart format, particularly under stress, than it would be from the original charts, emergency procedure charts. So this, what I suggest you do here is you take a look at the video on the channel that covers this, and you recreate the table from the video using pencil. And if you make a mistake, a spacing mistake, or a flowchart mistake, then you can always use your eraser to wipe that out and start over. Once you actually do the chart and you're satisfied with it, you can actually make this more permanent by then taking your Milwaukee marker or some other permanent marker and actually tracing over the letters. So that'll make it much more permanent. The other thing that will do is in the event that you need to use a refill for your Wetnotes, then you can just cut the little wire ties here, and then you can insert the one that you have with a permanent marker into the new set of Wetnotes, so you don't have to recopy it. So here's another emergency procedure. This is for a missed single decompression stop, and it's the same thing. It's got a flow chart, and again, that's in the video on the channel. Next, we have some equations that any new technical diver should be aware of and be able to calculate. And this is for the working part of the dive. This is how to calculate an MOD for 1.4 partial pressure of oxygen. So we have the formula for that here. And then we also have the MOD formula based on 1.6 partial pressure for decompression processes. So these two formulas, which new technical divers need to be capable of calculating. All right, so next we have the END, equivalent narcotic depth calculation, assuming that O2 is narcotic, and we have that here. So then again, if you need to calculate your equivalent narcotic depth for a particular blend of trimix, you'll be able to calculate that. You can also manipulate both these equations and that one if you need something, for example, that you're trying to do the calculation backwards. You're trying to find out what kind of gas you need for a particular depth. Lastly, we have the SAC calculation. This is the working SAC calculation based on actual consumption of the PSI used at the depth for a particular depth and a particular time. This is the working calculation, but it could also be used for a deco calculation, but it is distinct from the TDI SAC calculation, where you're in a relaxed state and you're going to multiply that by a dive factor in order to calculate your actual consumption at a particular depth. So the calculation is a little bit different for that. So if you have these things and anything else that you want to have for quick reference, you can put these in the back of the book. And again, you can do this in pencil first and write on it with magic marker, or if you think you have good handwriting, then you can go ahead and straight away do it with the magic marker to make it permanent. Okay, so this is just another enhancement to the Wetnotes for new technical divers. All right, so the last thing we're going to talk about is where do you keep your Wetnotes? What I'll typically do is I'll carry a set of Wetnotes, including a decompression, emergency decompression plan, on the front of my utility pouch, which I have on my waist belt on my different plate and wing systems. But what I think most people will do is I think most people will just take their Wetnotes and they'll put it in a pocket. Sometimes you may not want to continuously be taking your Wetnotes in and out of your pocket. So one of the things you can do is you can put it temporarily on your arm like this to get it out of the way, but still have it accessible. And then you can also put a bolt snap, or in this case a trigger snap, on the bottom of the Wetnotes, so that you can put them on a D-ring and they'll be readily accessible. This is Chris with Dive Zone Scuba. I hope this video was helpful. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe.